please welcome the General Manager of Unreal Engine, Mark Petit.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Orpheum for the second Unreal Engine SIGGRAPH user group. How did you like that reel? That was badass. And that's you guys, that's your work, so thank you so much for doing all of this. It's absolutely amazing. So, how many of you were here last year, 2 years ago, for the first user group? Some of you? We had fun, right? You remember that we introduced DataSmith. 2 years ago, DataSmith was that tool to take the data very easily into Unreal Engine to create videos and to create immersive interactive content. 18 months ago, we took DataSmith and we released it as part of Unreal Studio, and already 300,000 people have been subscribing to this product. That's quite amazing. And 3 months ago, we took another step with the release of Twinmotion, a 3D visualization tool with absolutely zero learning curve. It's been already downloaded by more than 100,000 architects, landscape planners, urban designers, and visualization specialists. So we're humbled by those numbers, and we want to thank you for all of our users for your support. That day is for you. That presentation is for you to thank you for that. So last year in Vancouver, SIGGRAPH, the big news, of course, was ray tracing, and you'll see more of that today. But also, what I remember about last year was really the industry getting behind the open source software in a big way with the creation of the Academy Software Foundation. Of course, Epic Games was the founding member of the Academy Software Foundation. But we take the support of open source software one step further. With our mega grant program, we just announced a long-term commitment to the Blender Foundation. Blender 2.8 is shipping tomorrow. Right, Ton, where are you? It's shipping tomorrow, so do not miss it, check it out, it's an amazing release. And working on more initiatives, particularly around USD, we believe USD has the potential to transform the industry. It's a fantastic open source initiative. We're 100% behind it. You'll hear from Kim Ribery, our CTO, about that. So it's incredible to think that only 2 years ago, and see how much things have changed. This industry is changing so rapidly, there has never been a better moment to be an artist, a developer, or a creator. Tools are getting better and faster, and now we even have new media to express ourselves. And you'll hear some of those stories today. You'll hear how we can use Unreal Engine to create better linear content, but you also hear about amazing experience, about stories that you can live and experiment. Also, 2 years ago, we went to DigiPro with a new pipeline to create animated content by streaming Alembic caches, another open source format, into Unreal Engine. These techniques to produce animation is now widely used across the world. And you may remember that our demo at the time was the cinematic trailer of a game we had just released called Fortnite. Since then, Fortnite has grown into a large-scale social experience where games, storytelling, and linear content converge. So the best person to talk to you about Fortnite is with us today. He's Donald Mustard. He's our worldwide creative director at Epic Games. He just wrapped up the Fortnite World Cup in New York yesterday. So please join me to welcome Donald Mustard to SIGGRAPH 2019.
Hello. How are you guys doing? So I have a suspicion that I know why you're here. And I don't mean just here with us now. I don't mean just at SIGGRAPH, but why you're even in this field of work, why you do what you do. It's because you want to bring joy and delight and awe to people. You are all, every one of you, I bet, inherently storytellers. Like, that's why we do what we do. We want to tell stories. So let me tell you a story really quick. So the year was 1999. I was just finishing up my last year of university, and it was when The Matrix came out. And just a few months later, The Phantom Menace came out. And as a poor student, I made my way to my very first SIGGRAPH a few months after that. And I was blown away by those two movies. They changed the way I looked at everything. And I happened to be in this talk at SIGGRAPH where John Knoll was speaking about how they created Episode 1, and specifically how they created the pod racer sequence. And to me, those three kind of things together felt like a revolution. It felt like a revolution in how films would be made going forward. Cut to 20 years later, now it's 2019, and it feels to me like we are on the cusp of another revolution, the real-time revolution. And I think this is true. So let's talk about this for a second. I've had the amazing opportunity for the last few years to be the director of Fortnite and to be able to work with this incredible group of people to create this experience that we think of as an experience. We don't actually think of Fortnite as a video game. We think of it really as a persistent virtual place where you can essentially just hang out with your friends and do fun stuff. We really try to create a place. Our goal was really to say, could we make somewhere that felt like you were just always at the best party ever? Could we create something that felt like in our imaginations what it was like when we were kids? Remember what it was like to be a kid and to play in your backyard or play in the forest, where in your imagination just anything was possible and anything could happen? That's the goal of Fortnite, is to make you feel like you're in a world where anything can happen at any time and that you have complete agency over that and that everything is okay and you're unbounded by your experience. So Fortnite is our attempt to make that place. Fortnite now has well over 250 million people that are in this experiment with us. It's the most played game in the world. And really, three ideas form the backbone of how we approach narrative and how we approach shaping that experience in the world of Fortnite. And we're going to talk about three of them briefly today. The first is agency. The second is a thing we call the campfire theory. And the third is this idea of live tentpole events. So let's briefly talk about all three. So I've been making games for almost 20 years. And typically when you tell a story in a traditional linear format, you enter the worlds through the characters. Like when I saw The Matrix in 1999, I loved that story, and I loved the world that the Wachowskis created. But really, it was about the journey of Neo, right? We were all about learning about the journey of Neo, what he was going to learn, what he was going to go through, what he was going to experience, what his character arc was. And then the other characters as well, Morpheus and Trinity and all the different characters and where that led them. That's amazing. That's how we tell stories. It's how we get our emotional anchor in traditional storytelling. In games, it's something that I've struggled with creating, and I think all game creators struggle with this a little bit. Because let's say I'm playing a game where I'm Batman. Now, I love Batman. He's one of my favorite characters ever created. And if I'm playing a game, I feel like Batman, and I'm doing all this cool Batman stuff, and I look like Batman, that's awesome. But I always feel like I have this level of cognitive dissonance because I have agency. At the end of the day, I'm not Batman, I'm me. And so if I'm controlling this character, well, maybe I want to follow your storyline, but maybe I don't. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe Batman never uses guns. What if I want to use a gun? Batman, always does the right thing and, is tireless. What if I'm just tired and want to go hang out with my buds or do something different? That's a very un-Batman-like thing. And so that starts to mess with the arc that you're trying to put me on. But as I'm controlling something, I feel this pull of agency. So with Fortnite, we said, what if we try and experiment with this? What if we say that we are never going to break the agency of the player? Now, in Fortnite, we have hundreds of characters. But we don't call them characters, we call them outfits, because you are always you in Fortnite. When you enter the game, we never do anything that breaks that sense of agency. You are always in control of yourself, but we still wanted to create an emotional attachment for you. So our idea, our wild experiment, was what if we made the world, what if we made the island of Fortnite the main character? What if we created a beginning, a middle, an end, an arc for this character of the island, and we'd have things happen to this place, and because things would happen there, you would start to form an emotional attachment to it. And this started to work. And in fact, almost more the way I think of it now is not a beginning, a middle, and an end, and more of like a past, a present, a future. And so because of that, we can start to build things like nostalgia. We can build things like attachment. And these are things that are really kind of working in our environment. And it's something worth, I think, experimenting with. So that was the first principle. The second idea is a thing we called the campfire theory. So this was just something we came up with, but in our imagination, I imagine the very first night when humans invented fire. Whenever we discovered fire, I guess not invented, when we discovered fire, that night, I think someone built a bonfire. And in that moment, the very first entertainer was born. Someone started telling a story. They were like, so I was out in the woods, and I heard a noise, and there was a creeping thing. And that's probably the greatest story that's ever been told, right? Because it was the first story, and all the jokes were new, and all the storylines were new, and they could tell, they could look at their audience, and in the firelight, they could see, the light bouncing off their eyes, which jokes worked, which storylines worked, and they could modify the story to their audience in the telling of it. They were basically telling a live story. And ever since then, we've invented all sorts of tools to spread our stories wider. We invented writing, we invented theaters like this, we invented screens to project movies onto. But everything we've added, though awesome, separates the storyteller from the audience. And so with Fortnite, we said, what can we do? How can we build tools that will allow us to, as close as possible, be modifying what we're doing in the world, in the game, to where people interact with it? I talk with all of my filmmaker friends, and they really lament that, the very last time they get to tweak one of their movies or tweak a thing they're working on is often months before people get to consume it. And then once they do, they can't react to the feedback, right? It's years before the next movie or TV show will come out. With Fortnite, we have tools where we can see something's happening and react almost on the fly. There's so often where there will be a big moment or a big event or a big thing happening in the game, and we see how people are reacting to us leading up to it, and even maybe hours before it goes live, we'll tweak a thing or add something that makes the audience feel like they were anticipating or even participating in the story. It's a very, very powerful device. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is one-time-only live event-based tentpole story moments. So we decided we were going to try in this experiment to see if we could combine those first two principles with the idea that we would create tools that let us do stuff live in the world. So not pre-canned, not a cinematic that you would watch, but an event that would unfold around you while not impugning your agency in any way that you could participate in. And this has been things from just last week, we had this huge 1,000-foot Voltron-esque robot fight a huge Godzilla-like monster. And this all happened on the island, affecting the island, ripping it apart, all while millions, tens of millions of players were live in that environment participating in this event. A few months ago, we had a concert, a live concert. We partnered with Marshmallow, and we did a live concert in the game that was live motion capture and live voice streamed into the game in real time that tens of millions of people watched and participated in live. Now, these are really, really cool tools that have allowed us to do some, I think, fun experimental stuff. Lots of different cool things that we've done. I mean, this was like an example of the monster fight. And lots of cool things coming up that we're going to be doing soon. I think on a final note, this has allowed us to also work with some really cool partners like Marvel and Disney and others that have allowed us to start to bring a convergence of different intellectual properties into one place that starts to be the foundation of what could eventually become the metaverse. And that's a story for a different time. One last note. Again, I think we're all storytellers. And I do this because I love the stories that you tell. They inspire me. They inspire all of us. And I think, again, we're on the cusp of this new revolution in how we tell stories. I think 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll be hopefully in awe of what we've all kind of created together. And I'm excited for it, and I hope you are too. So let me introduce our CTO, Kim Library, who's going to tell you lots more about the tools that we use and hopefully all will experiment with together to make these new experiences. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Donald. It's kind of funny, actually, that he mentions the Matrix. The last time I was on this stage here was SIGGRAPH 20 years ago, 1999, presenting the bullet time effects and how we made that movie. And incidentally, Mark Petit was also part of Softimage at the time, and it was Softimage show. Mark and David Marin were here, so a little bit trip down memory lane. Anyway, as we can see from what Donald was showing, the worlds of games, television, and movies are converging at an incredible pace. Many of the core graphics techniques we are using today are becoming the same across all them industries, from digitization through modeling to lighting and rigging and rendering. This image of Alicia Vikander, a few years ago in normal visual effects production would have taken many hours to render. Nowadays, we can do it in 42 milliseconds, and it's interactive, and on top of that, we can also ray trace, all live. And now the same is becoming true for special effects. Our new physics, particle, and simulation framework has been designed to head us down a path towards movie-quality spectacle, but within the interactive worlds of games and new generations of experiences. Here are some of the features that we're currently supporting, but we're going to add to this stuff year on year, month after month, and simulations are going to be a very big focus for us. All this new technology is shipping right now as experimental and early access in 4.23. So we actually have content examples that you can download and play with at home and get yourself into this new world of Unreal Engine simulated destruction and particles. And actually, if you go by the booth, you can actually play Robo Chaos if you want to. With all these developments, final pixels are becoming possible in Unreal Engine. And we're already starting to see companies that will be represented here today experiment in this world. And final pixels mean, could you use pixels generated by a game engine in a final visual effect? Could you use it to produce in-camera effects? And now we have RTX-enabled ray tracing, things are even more amazing. And a real-time future is inevitable. We now interact with visual effects at such a deep level that a new type of production methodology is emerging. Virtual production is what we all call it. It initially started out with Sequencer, which is the foundation for cinematics and editorial tools in Unreal. And that was able to revolutionize pre-visualization and shot design. You can dress a set, light a set, compose shots, and edit sequences together, all within inside the engine. Even our Fortnite marketing material, all of that's made in Sequencer. So even the cool sequence with Peely and Jonesy boogieing down was made in Unreal and in Sequencer. And it's one of the nice things about us being a production company as well as an engine company is that we're able to actually push this stuff through our own usage as well as the amazing usage of our customers. Our multi-user features allows teams to come together and collaborate in one unified creative environment. And for non-expert users, we've expanded our VR editor to allow directors, cinematographers, and production designers to have a super-friendly user interface that they're able to work within the same virtual space, but also be able to have expert users who are masters of the editing systems and the shading systems of the engine work at their sides as they're collaborating. And this is an example of a project that we're going to actually be showing at SIGGRAPH here of everybody working together from VR to on-set. There's even an iPad interface that you're able to use to control the engine. We've also been working very hard to enhance end display, which allows you to immerse either your subjects or even your audience in worlds that you've created. You can now run large-scale projection or LED walls based installations that have many, many parallel computers working together to increase resolution and complexity of these scenes. In fact, this image up above us is from a recent Childish Gambino concert that our friends at Weta Digital created, and they used Unreal Engine and were able to sort of set the template for a totally new dimension in entertainment. I hear it was an amazing show, and just to have everything dynamically going with the music, editable, under the control of the performer is incredible. And to help with workflow integration, we're very committed to USD as a vehicle to help transport your interactive work both into and out of more traditional pipelines. And we're working pretty closely with our friends at Pixar and the whole visual effects industry to make sure that that standard evolves in a way that is great for real time. So here are some of the features that we're shipping for Unreal Engine 4.23. I won't go through them, it's all in the blog. But as you can see, a lot of stuff that is relevant for virtual production and filmmaking. And to demonstrate how all this stuff comes together in a combined filmmaking workspace, check out this video that we put together from our test stage here in LA with a whole bunch of friendly companies that we've been hanging out with that shows the potential of when you bring it all together. OK, roll the video.
Great, let's cut and reset.
No matter what the project is, the creatives always want to see the closest representation to the final product as early on in the creative process.
When I first walked onto set and the wall was up and we started to look through the camera, it really started to feel like I was just filming in this actual location.
We can track a camera's position in space in real time and render its perspective so that we can compellingly convince a camera that something else is happening in front of it that really isn't there.
The thing to keep in mind is that the 3D world that you see on the wall is also a 3D scene that you can manipulate in Unreal Engine. So this gives the filmmakers full flexibility to make any change they want to the scene live.
So it's really exciting to see that we can, use the real-time lighting to not only change the environments virtually, but also have it affect the on-set lighting as well. This opens up kind of like a virtual playground to shoot in.
With a VR Scout, you have your department heads collaboratively going into the world together. They're able to make decisions that inform the creative process down the road. It gets them more grounded into the scene that they're shooting, into the story they're trying to tell.
Because you can interactively change the world, it brings all of those departments together because each one of them has a role in how this world is portrayed at some point along in the production.
The director and the DP, they're back, and they're now able to work directly with the teams in real time. It's a really exciting creative process to be part of.
Cool. So this is just the beginning of an emerging field, and we're super interested to hear your vision of how you would like to use Unreal Engine to create and tell new stories. So for our next speaker, I'd like to introduce you to a friend that represents the best of artistic creativity and software development. Please give a warm welcome to cinematographer, developer, and all-around cool guy, Matt Workman. Hey, Matt, come on. There we go.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Matt Workman, and I'm the developer of Cinetracer. Cinetracer is developed in Unreal Engine, of course, and it's a tool for professional filmmakers to be able to plan the visuals for commercials, television shows, and feature films. But before Cinetracer, before I was a developer, this is me. I was a cinematographer in New York City shooting commercials, music videos, etc. And what I've learned from being on set is that planning is crucial. If the key creatives only have the vision in their head and no one else can see it, you're going to have a bad time. When I first started getting into more advanced planning, I was using Google SketchUp, and it does a pretty good job. You can see that. We can place objects, and we can kind of do camera work, but the main thing missing for me as a cinematographer was lighting. I want to communicate lighting. So to do that, I moved from SketchUp into Maya and then into Cinema 4D. So we had the cameras, we had the lighting. It was working pretty well, but there was still just one big problem in that for filmmakers, cinematographers, it just takes too much time. If we put up the camera, the lights, we want to render a single frame, you're talking minutes to hours, and animation is kind of out of the scope for most cinematographers to plan a shoot. So the real solution was for me to then bring all that work, all that research directly into Unreal Engine and take advantage of the real-time rendering capabilities. So I bring in all the assets and I start building the stuff that I've always been building. These are cameras, lights, actors, but I'm in a game engine. So I start experimenting with game mechanics, and these are the results. It's okay to have a little fun. That's a big part of what I'm trying to build. So eventually, it's time to release the Kraken, the early release, the beta. We're talking like one map here. Really basic build, but in about a month, we have thousands and thousands of filmmakers around the world using Cinetracer, and it's a great launch. Since the launch, every day I'm adding new features. I post videos online, and the difference now is that we have filmmakers around the world using it and giving feedback on actual shoots. And this back and forth of making features, getting feedback. This is a daily thing. I'm doing this every single day, talking directly with the film industry, and it's allowed me to pick the direction of where we're going much easier. Cinetracer today, we're running Unreal Engine 4.22. It's the latest public build, and we're recently just hit a big milestone, and we have enabled real-time ray tracing. Ray tracing isn't something that most filmmakers and cinematographers think that they need, but now they'll see that they do. The difference with ray tracing, when you have it, when you turn it on, the lighting in Cinetracer looks and feels like the lighting in the real world. So here's the list. It's kind of a mouthful. We have real-time ray-traced shadows, real-time ray-traced reflections. That's actually my whole list. There's more we're going to do, and there's more coming out in .2.3. And when we look through the camera now, when we combine all this together, we have an amazing quality of light that's like the real world, and we're lighting with reflections. If you've ever been on set with a cinematographer or on any shoot, you'll see that they like to change the lights a lot. They like to experiment and find it in the moment and find the right emotion by moving things and looking at it. And we have that same sort of environment going here, and now we have the quality and we have the interactivity in real time all together. And we build all these tools and we put them together so that we can give filmmakers the ability to shape the emotion of the scene. Light coming through the window sets the tone, sets the mood, and the key light on the actor's face looks great as well. Filmmaking is evolving extremely quickly, more today than ever. There's new pipelines, new workflows, and there's new tools, and Cinetracer is one of those. But what I want to stress, especially to the production folks in the film industry, is that with Cinetracer, I want to preserve and honor and respect the traditions of the traditional film industry, the techniques, the practices. I'm building all of that, especially regarding cinematography, directly into the core of Cinetracer. And I'm working directly with Epic Games and Unreal Engine to build tools for the future, for today, and we're giving those tools directly to the directors and the cinematographers so they can do what they do best, which is create stunning images and tell great stories. Thank you.
We knew we could make a high-quality result, particularly if we went with the Unreal Engine, because it has so many features related to image quality that we knew that we'd be embracing for this project.
The Unreal Engine was such a pleasure for us. It allows us to create experiences that are hyper-realistic. Frankly, it's going to change the way we present the weather.
The engine delivers out of the box such a good quality and such a good lighting and shadowing system that those pre-baking workflows were no longer needed at the end.
So the car really felt for the first time like a real car. You really want to touch it.
The key to realism is subtlety. And Unreal Engine 4 really allowed us to reach that very photoreal, final pixel quality. And that was absolutely necessary to reach this level of fidelity.
My eyes are open to the power of working in real time, and with the power of the assets and the power of how fast Unreal Engine was, it was just a perfect marriage to get movie quality shots right out of the box.
All right. How cool was this, you know? At Epic, we like when tools are made by creator for creator, and really Matt Workman is the perfect illustration of that. So our next presenter is a treat. He's a senior director of software development at Digital Domain. He's been there since its inception. Remember, 1993, Stan Winston, James Cameron, and Scott Ross coming together to form this upstart. He's also someone, he's the chair of the SciTech committee at the Academy. So he's Doug Rubble. He's at the forefront of creation of photorealistic digital humans. So first, we'll watch some of the presentation he gave at TED a few months ago. It was the first ever TED Talk given by a digital human.
I got to do a TED Talk. I write software. This is insane. So, at Digital Domain, where I work, over the last, about 15 years, we've been working on putting digital humans and digital characters into film. And, it really came to fore in Benjamin Button. And over the years, we've been working on new ways of building realistic characters in film that you really couldn't tell were digital, or at least you're like, whatever. And we've gotten pretty good at it, right? we've gotten a whole new pipeline on how to do this that finally culminated with Thanos and Avengers. In that, we had changed the way we do character animation. We'd said, let's take the old ways and throw them out, and let's drive this character animation with the actual performance of the actor. And then we sort of said, well, hold on, could we do this in real time? And last year, we started showing off some of this stuff. I showed a little bit here and a little bit there at SIGGRAPH, and it caught some notice. And 3.5 weeks before the TED conference, we got this email. It was just a little email that said, by the way, would you like to do a TED talk at the TED conference? And by the way, we'd really, really insist on a live demo, which we had never, ever done outside of our company. So, of course, you can't say no to TED. You only get invited to TED once. And so we had to do a TED talk. But we knew we had two cool things that are holding us up. First, this new machine learning framework that takes my image and transfers it onto the digital character. And then second, Unreal. Unreal's platform, we had been relying on that to do all our rendering and everything in real time. So what does it take actually to make somebody look real? Well, detail, right? We have, first of all, a brand new deformation system that uses machine learning to take all the details of how I move my face, all the wrinkles, all the everything that gets in there, and we slotted that right into Unreal. And we're pretty proud of this, where we have this machine learning framework that just feeds Unreal with all this extra data. But it's not just that. Look at all the hair. All this hair is individual geometry. There's not a card in here. And there are new ways of doing skin. Remember, we're driving this character in a brand new way. So we've got normal and bump maps with animated normals, all sorts of cool stuff. And not only that, everything in this character is animated. There's nothing really static about anything about this. Even the eyebrows and the hairs on my face needed to stick with the skin. But the skin was being driven by machine learning, so we had to have more machine learning to figure out where the eyebrows and the eyelashes were. And we even went as crazy as blood flow. We measured how my face, when my expressions change, how the blood in my face changes. And you can really see it when I scrunch my nose. The white parts of my face come out and the blood drains away. So we have multiple textures that we basically figured out the most important parts of blood flow, and you can see the weighting changes, and this was all learned from my actual face. This is pretty cool. This is really neat. But then we have to render it. And so look at this. We got the camera right up in my face, and you can see all the detail, all the everything in there. But check it out. This is Unreal with the latest NVIDIA graphics cards, right? And so we're taking full advantage of all this. We've got depth of field, we've got motion blur, and it gives it such a cinematic, realistic quality. If you are up against somebody's face like this, of course nothing's going to be in focus. You're focused in on that one spot, so you get this nice depth of field out of there. And all of this stuff is running at over 60 frames a second. It had to run at over 60 frames a second. First of all, that's how fast we're capturing my face. We've got a machine vision camera that's just pointed at my face, and we have to keep up with the camera. But also, it's really important, because if we don't, the face just doesn't look smooth enough. It really has to have that kind of performance. So these big graphics cards that we're using and the Unreal platform are really enabling this kind of quality. Now, what kind of quality, right? I mean, you're looking at this. When I showed this to TED, they were flabbergasted. But this is SIGGRAPH. And so you're looking at this, you're seeing flaws and stuff like that. And that's okay. We see them all the time. But I just wanted to show you this. This is hot off the presses. We are constantly doing more look dev with DigiDoug. And here you can see V-Ray DigiDoug, and here's Unreal DigiDoug. And This is not a knock on V-Ray. V-Ray is our gold standard. You know, this is a production quality renderer that we use on all our films. V-Ray is awesome. But that is running at 60 frames a second. And you start looking at that and going, holy smokes, how have things changed? And all of a sudden you start thinking about, man, if you look at that and you look at my face, it's pretty close. Now, you may be wondering, why aren't I driving DigiDoug right now? Well, first of all, DigiDoug requires a lot of stuff. I have to wear a motion capture suit, and I've got a helmet camera, and I've got computers like crazy. And all of those things are over at the convention center because we're showing this off at Real-Time Live tomorrow. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we're going to be doing one of the presentations at Real-Time Live, along with some other stuff from Unreal. So definitely check it out. We're going to be showing more stuff. If you've seen the TED Talk, it's not going to be the TED Talk. There'll be some similarities, but it's not going to be the TED Talk. And if you haven't seen the TED Talk, go watch the TED Talk. Get my views up. Boosh. And that's it. There you go. Go to Real-Time Live. It'll be fast. Thanks, everyone.
Amazing stuff. I love Doc's presentation because as a real human, he looks like an animated character already, so it's great. And he can pull off the spandex suit on stage. Don't get me to try, okay? I will not do this. So let's talk about Real-Time Live. You're going to have a dilemma. We're going to have a dilemma this year because we have 3 amazing presentations at Real-Time Live that use Unreal Engine tomorrow night. So we have our Chaos Destruction demo that you can experience the back room later this afternoon. We have Digital Dog, and we have our friend from Quixel. We'll be presenting Rebirth using their Megascan environment. So dilemma is all yours. Go to Real-Time Live. Enjoy the great presentations. So let's switch gear and see how we can actually create a better on-stage experience for the creative team and produce higher quality content faster. Our next presenter is an expert at that. He founded Stargate Studios 30 years ago, next month. And since then, Stargate has consistently innovated in the domain of real-time visual effects and storytelling. Sam Nicholson, AIC, is the founder and CEO of Stargate. He's a very active member here in the LA community. He's teaching at the AIC, but he is also at the helm of a 10 studio worldwide that actually create real-time visual effects. So he's here today to show you how he's using Unreal Engine on stage. Please welcome Sam Nicholson, ASC. Sam, all yours.
Well, welcome to the Orpheum, and thank you for coming. We've got a couple of interesting things to show you today that we've been doing. And you know, when you look at the overview of visual effects for 30, 40 years, I started on Star Trek doing the V'ger sequence, which was all in camera with scrims, giant scrims that we'd light up and stuff. And it was optical printing and film, so whatever you wanted to do live had to be live projection with rear projection, whatever. And ironically now, with the Unreal Engine, we're coming back to what we can do on set. So we're now taking scripts and saying what can be done in real time. And whole concepts. So I'll show you some stuff very quickly here, which is all done, you know, no green screen. We're still doing green screen, but this is no green. And it's all done live in camera with no post enhancements. There's one establishing shot that's a model shot, but you know, you'll get the idea. So what that was, and what this is for an HBO production called Run, the whole thing's on a train. And the challenge was about 350 visual effects shots per per episode. It's episodic. So you've got 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 shots potentially on green with a bunch of reflective surfaces that are kind of impossible, or you figure out how to do it in camera. So using in-display, off-axis tracking, and we're tying in the light, which is very important. And basically shooting a whole bunch of plates. I just got back from Chicago to LA on a train with 8K cameras shooting SIMO across the states. We're going to go back. So we're projecting all that stuff, and we'll do about 4,000 shots in camera with no green screen over the next 10 weeks in Toronto. So here's something to just look at the lighting particularly. This is from an ASC class where we're doing, a little more traditional stuff outside windows and stuff, looking for different applications for how to use real-time and visual effects. So the motorcycle stuff it's an entire Neo-Tokyo that has been built in a couple of weeks just to see proof of concept. But the idea is that the background is virtual, or in the stage scene with the girl, that is actually 3D set extensions with 2D backplanes. So we're combining very high-res photographic data with 3D modeling, tracking everything all together, and then tying lights, a lot of lights, pixel tracked to what's on the screen so you can shape the light as a DP. So we're not depending on that to light me. You can never get sunlight out of that screen. But you can out of like a DMX ellipsoid light that hits me hard. But it has to be synchronized. So basically we synchronize everything, track it, put it all together in the Unreal Engine, and you shake it up, and what comes out should look real and should not have to have any post visual effects enhancements. So we've kind of done something like that upstairs with the through-view demo. That's moving it towards production design, where if it's real, put it on set. This is, we did for, the Orville, a lot of shows that we do, we're experimenting with how to move these things into principal photography. And what can you do and what can't you do by taking the power of an entire post-production visual effects facility, like Stargate, and moving it onto set. And it requires like a mindset change, because we're now saying fix it in prep rather than fix it in post, but it puts a lot of heat on the visual effects artists themselves, because it's live performance. So if anybody's interested in that, by all means, let me know, because we're training up a whole new group of visual effects artists that want to be on set. And other than that, next time you get a script, just be prepared for somebody to say, what can we do in real time? And if you've got friends like Epic and NVIDIA and Unreal and all these things, G-Tech, it takes a lot of tools, but you can probably save half of it we can do in real time, and you'll love it. Then just fasten your seatbelt, because it's going to be a great ride. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. No more green screen. No wonder directors, cinematographers, and actors love working with Stargate. So let's switch gear. We're going to talk now about interactive content and story that can actually live. Our next guest, she is the executive in charge of ILMxLAB, a group within Lucasfilm that explores immersive entertainment across a wide variety of media and formats. You may have seen on TV that Unreal Engine is now used routinely to create amazing live graphics for television shows, for concerts and events and exhibition. But what you're about to see is how ILMxLAB and Walt Disney Imagineering are taking this to new heights. So it's my immense pleasure to welcome on the stage Vicki Dobbs-Baggs to tell you all about it. Vicki?
Hi, I'm Vicki, and as Mark said, I run ILMxLAB. ILMxLAB is Lucasfilm's immersive entertainment studio. I'd like to start by suggesting why a conversation about innovation in storytelling matters. I think this quote by Ursula K. Le Guin really says it all. There have been great societies that did not use the wheel. but there have been no societies that did not tell stories. Stories are as much a part of us as life itself. And so when there are new ways to tell stories, as with immersive platforms, we at Lucasfilm should be there, pioneering with Star Wars. And many of you here are joining us in forging that future. But we have to remember that what we do today is important. It's a responsibility, because people are forming opinions about the potential of these new mediums as we speak. With a compelling foundation laid through R&D and real-time technology, much of it powered by Epic's Unreal Engine, we launched ILMxLAB in 2015 with a desire for the first time for people to truly be able to step inside our stories. So let's take a look. What guides us is this notion that creativity leads and technology enables, but sometimes technology also inspires. And this has been the case in our collaboration with Epic. Their Unreal Engine has enabled cinematic quality interactivity, and it's also inspired us to push the boundaries of our thinking in the area of immersive storytelling. This has been especially vital in a world where the lines between media types have blurred. At ILMxLAB, our goal is to move from storytelling to this idea of story living. VR is a powerful platform in this regard. One of its great strengths is putting you into the world, the power of being there. Now couple that with being at the center of your adventure, where your actions propel the narrative forward, and then deepen the experience through meaningful connection with characters, the power of connection. No longer is this one-way communication. You are in the world, and you matter. Nowhere has this been more important than in Vader Immortal, our VR story series. In approaching Vader Immortal, we recognized that it was not a film, not a game, and not an attraction, but we could learn from all of these. And indeed, our team comprised experts from all of these areas. We wanted to combine high-quality visuals, sound, and compelling interactivity in a way not previously attempted or achieved. We had to learn from one another, be open to approaching design and implementation in new ways. We had to develop a shared language that crossed traditional boundaries of design and creation. It was and continues to be an incredibly exciting journey of experimentation and discovery. Finally, we had a unique opportunity to explore the idea of connected stories. In essence, Star Wars Secrets of the Empire, which was the hyper-reality location-based experience we created in collaboration with The Void, with help from Epic, it sets up the Vader Immortal series. So whereas in Secrets of the Empire, you were on an outpost on Mustafar and could see Vader's monolith in the distance, in Vader Immortal, you have the opportunity to go into the monolith and engage with Vader on his home turf, not to mention wield a lightsaber. Again, this idea of place and connection. As demonstrated in the Reflections piece produced in collaboration with Epic and NVIDIA in 2018, real-time technology is making what seemed impossible possible. This level of realism in an interactive experience is fundamentally transforming the broader entertainment landscape. So let's talk a little bit about the future and where we're going. I borrowed this image from my colleague Mo and Leo, who believe that 8-bit images convey the idea that we can only begin to imagine how the future will unfold. At ILMxLAB, we're striving toward a holistic approach to connected, immersive story experiences. with each designed to maximize the strengths of the individual platform. In the future, experiences will extend across platforms. Your character companions can join you on your journey and can recognize not only your friends, but their virtual companions as well. Imagine overlays to theme parks, public locations, your home. Self-driving cars will become entertainment hubs. Map cities and buildings will allow us to take mixed reality to the streets. And there will be opportunities for AR and VR social events, perhaps the culmination of an ongoing adventure. What previously you had experienced alone, the finale is experienced together. At ILMxLAB, we seek to be pioneers in all shades of reality. We want to create experiences that are dynamic, social, personal, and hopefully even transformational. And what I hope you take away from these brief comments is that story matters. It's story that propels the action, story that triggers emotions, and it's story that gives us that sense of fulfillment. It is possible to move from storytelling to story living. So speaking of all shades of reality and story living, I'd like to introduce Bei Yang of Walt Disney Imagineering, with whom ILMxLAB had the privilege of collaborating in the making of Smugglers Run at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Welcome, Bei.
Wow, thank you. I am from Walt Disney Imagineering. My name is Bei Yang. For those of you guys that don't know, Imagineering is the creative center of the Walt Disney Company, and we're really responsible for creating theme parks, resorts, but really it's about the guest experience. And more recently, we've just opened up Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland Resort. In fact, so you can go to this right now. Now, what's amazing about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is it immerses our guests in the universe of Star Wars. And it's really about wish fulfillment. And what's the best wish, at least for me, is to be able to pilot the Millennium Falcon. And this is, a dream I've had since a little kid, watching Star Wars for the first time. Now, if you take a look at this, right, we actually allow you and 5 other friends to go and be pilots on this magnificent ship. And I can tell you that from firsthand experience, that when I put my hands on that lever and I pull it and I get to go into hyperspace, that is wish fulfilled. Now, this is something that we've been working on for a while, right? And we've been trying to develop technology to be able to do this for quite a while. And these are some of the problems we have to solve, right? We want to be able to immerse you in the ship, and we want to be able to render everything in real time because we want you to be able to pilot the actual ship. So all of these things we had to solve: field of view, resolution, rendering fidelity. Now, field of view, right, what do I mean? When you have a 3D game engine running a game on your living room television, it's really just a rectangular screen. How do you blow that out to an overall cockpit? And then through all of that, we want it to be perfectly eye-limiting resolution, so that means about 5,400 pixels horizontally. Now, when I talk about resolution with field of view, I really talk about this problem, right? For anybody that's a rendering engineer in here, you can't really just push the view frustum and make it wider. You get into this resolution problem. So, in the world of VR, traditionally you render out a cube map and then you reproject that cube map back onto a dome. And that's precisely what we've done with 5 projectors, and we actually put the cockpit inside a dome with 5 projectors. So this means that we don't have to render the back. That means we have to render about 3K per cube, 5 cubes. So that's the target for anybody that's interested in rendering in here. And of course, not only that, we also have to have rendering fidelity. So this is getting all of the full screen effects to actually work in a cube map, which, by the way, none of those algorithms that are actually developed for rendering those things are made for a cube map. So working with NVIDIA and working with Epic Games, we really had to do this such that we can have 3K per cube, 4 cube faces at 50 hertz, and still have all of the rendering fidelity. Now, if you take a look at traditional gaming hardware and what's there, right now, this is not possible with this type of resolution and this type of fidelity on the rendering hardware that we have available today. So we turned to multiple GPUs. Now, Some of you guys are, of course, gamers, and you guys have built gaming rigs. Multiple GPUs usually means about 2, 3 GPUs kind of SLI'd together. Well, we have this thing in which we have kind of essentially 4 views that we have to render out, right? Front, left, right, top. But what we really want to do is parallelize them. So, you can do this on 4 GPUs, but we didn't stop there. We went with 8 GPUs. So this is actually the highest amount of GPUs you can currently shove into a machine. And it's very loud when you recool this thing, but I can tell you it's kind of a beast. So this combined with alternate frame rendering, we were able to produce the visual fidelity and the frame rate that we wanted. And of course, working with NVIDIA and some of their very Quadro-specific features, such as SLI mosaic mode, we were able to bring that to the 5 projectors that's needed to create the experience Smugglers run. So for those of you guys that are very technically minded in here, here is the actual benchmarking chart from Smugglers Run, and we can actually see the zoomed-in picture, right? Every single one of these frames rendering at 30 hertz and then presenting at around 50 hertz. So just in review, right? This is 3K by 3K 4x, so this is about 38 million pixels, pushing 60 million vertices per frame at 50 hertz, with 15,000 static lights, 200 dynamic objects, and about 20 cast shadows. Now, what's really interesting about this is, we worked with Epic, we worked in NVIDIA, and we really had to invent a lot of these things. But why keep it for ourselves? We've actually been working with Epic Games to push this into the main branch of the engine. And in fact, some of that tech has already been used. In fact, in the Reflections demo that some of you guys may have seen, some of that code was already being used. And in fact, in 420 right now, some of the RHI in DX12 is already in there. You just have to look for it, and there's a compile flag to enable it. But that only supports basic rendering. We're continuing to work with Epic Games to put more generic features in there for 424 and beyond. So with NVIDIA collaboration, we're also putting in their NVLink, which is a much faster bus than PCI Express. And this continued development really is what's going to allow us to push the industry forward and therefore allow everybody to create amazing experiences. So many of you guys have been sitting in here and probably have been hearing a little bit of a whirl. You can hear it right now. That's actually the 8 GPU machine back there. It's running. And we're actually going to show you a real-time demo of this. So what we're seeing now is the actual ride footage being rendered out backstage on an 8 GPU machine. And in fact, you can actually see some of our rendering stats up here. So I want to say that this is usually projected out in a dome. So normally what you would see coming out directly out of those outputs is this. This is actually what goes into the projectors, and they get warped into one logical image. So what we're seeing here is actually a visualization of what the dome looks like. In fact, I can zoom out. That's the complete dome that the cockpit sits in. So going through this, we can actually see this is being rendered fully in real time. Now, I'm not going to show the full thing because I want you guys to go in the park and see this. But I want to show you this, which is my favorite part, which is putting my hand on that lever, pulling it, and going into hyperspace. So with that, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bay. All right, going into hyperspace. That was beautiful. Can't wait to experience this with my kids. I would like to thank our friends at NVIDIA for letting us have this cute 8 GPU monster that's been, keeping us entertained back there so that you can experience the content interactively. I thought it was important. So now we're going to go back to linear stories in television. Our next guest is a virtual production supervisor at the 3rd floor. She has spent the last 3 years literally immersed in the world of Game of Thrones. She's one of those, next-gen supervisor bringing new technology to film and television shoots. She's been solving some of the most difficult production challenges using the newest combination of tools and technology. So please join me to welcome Kaya Jabbar to the stage from the 3rd floor in London. Welcome, Kaya.
Hello, everyone. As Mark mentioned, I am a virtual production supervisor at the 3rd floor. But before that, I was an animator, and I'm still an animator. So my love for storytelling and for motion started at a very young age. Then I moved into games, and I found that there is a much bigger world out there where technology and art meet. I got to learn from the cinematic department in Guerrilla how implementing animation in a 3D space is actually much harder than implementing it in film, because you can cheat, but in games you can't, and it's all about interactivity. So today I actually wanted to take a moment and talk about that interactivity. At the third floor, we do visualization, and we've been pushing really hard to get previz to a stage that it's fully interactive. And where we did that first was on the last season of Game of Thrones. But the challenge there as well was that it was drama. We're used to big, spectacular fight scenes, but how do you visualize drama? We had been collaborating with HBO for nearly 5 years, but they posed us this new challenge. How do you visualize drama? Well, drama is mood, and mood is lighting. How do you light? How do you keep it interactive and lit? So what we did is we embedded two artists, a technical artist and a traditional VFX artist, in the art department. And they started building out these environments. Because the DOP and the production designer would not have enough time to do the usual type of recce's that they were used to in the real space, because it was not going to be built in time. So we gave them all the tools they were used to in a virtual space. But the challenges were that we needed to keep it optimized. Why was that? Well, because all of those environments, all of those new props that they were building at this tight schedule needed to go into VR. We had been prototyping a tool called Pathfinder, where people could step into a virtual world, and especially production crew could use the exact same tools that they were used to. They could lens up shots, they could measure with digital distos, and they had, real grips, VFX artists that were acting like grips, moving things around, changing lighting for them. But all of that was happening at real time. Of course, using real-time rendering was non-negotiable. We knew that these sets were going to be built for real. We knew that the lighting needed to interact with real materials. So we used a lot of that, PBR rendering. We made sure everything was super optimized, and we needed to make sure that all the lensing up that the DOP was doing would work in the final shot. Because lighting is mood, and mood is lighting. We also used Unreal streaming levels, binding them to button presses, where people could, at the touch of a button, change between the different levels of destruction, which meant that this exact same camera moves could be instantly visualized using different environments. Another really important thing was to create custom loadouts for each different member of the production team, because obviously as a DOP you need different tools, but we didn't want to overwhelm everyone with all the possible things you could do in VR. We wanted to custom tailor this to their experience. This meant that we could solve issues of scale and blocking really, really early, before a single construction person had started tearing the throne room apart. And because Pathfinder was designed as a modular collation of tools, it meant that we could do that really quick. And under the hood, because Unreal Engine is ticking every millisecond, it meant we could deploy code that would act as a virtual script supervisor. Because the most terrifying thing that you can do in a session like this is lose information. Because decisions are being made, ideas are being iterated on, and we knew that every single decision was precious. Every single camera choice, every single lens choice, every single film back that they picked for this scene was precious. And if we lost it, then why are we doing this? And also, of course, it meant that we could push all this information forward. We could push it into our visualization department, and they could just pick it up and start polishing animation. We could push it into the final vendors who needed to create that super long take of dragon animation because of this real-time rendering and this interaction that we were bringing back to previz. Of course, using this method of working was actually a game changer for the crew. It sped up the review process completely. It took away that, make a shot and then send it to editorial and then wait a while and they'll give you some feedback and then you make the shot again. And I think notes, when they're written down, they have to be interpreted. But we took that interpretation away. People were actually playing around in the space, choosing their own shots. But also because at the schedule that we had on Thrones was so compressed for the ambition that the team had, we knew that we needed to plan, but we didn't want to be restrictive. Because planning is super important, but it can be restrictive. The decisions that are being made could feel like they're happening somewhere else by an artist who's not you. So with using this technology, we reintroduced the happy accident. Because suddenly, you don't have to ask someone to turn around the camera view for you. You could do it yourself, making you faster. And I'll leave you with this thought, which was Steve Kovac, our VFX producer, who's a fantastic, inspirational leader, would occasionally walk into the room and say, is there a world where? And then he would pose a challenge. And that's how I ended up on a night shoot, freezing temperatures. But to me, when people say, is there a world? Is there a world? I find that, yeah, more and more, with the help of Unreal, and by pushing this technology forward and by collaborating, there is definitely a world. And that world is virtual production. Thank you.
Please welcome Miles Perkins.
How are you guys doing? I hope you're having a wonderful SIGGRAPH so far, and please give another round of applause for all of the presenters we've had to this point. I have to say it's really, really inspiring to kind of see all of the real-time workflows that are starting to come into play. It's almost like it's real-time right now, so definitely exciting. I now have the distinct pleasure of bringing to the stage our next guest. He's a director, producer, he's a writer, an actor, someone who is immersed in all aspects of storytelling. And he's also one of the pioneering creative forces behind some of the modern virtual production workflows. Throughout his career, he's been pushing to incorporate creative tools and kind of bridge the gap between what's virtual and what's physical. He's directed and executive produced Iron Man, Iron Man 2, served as executive producer on all of the Avengers films. He pushed the limits of virtual production techniques in the 2016 adaptation of The Jungle Book, and also, of course, of the recent blockbuster, The Lion King. He appears as an actor in numerous films, including the recent Spider-Man. He's executive producer of the upcoming Mandalorian TV series, which is going to be on Disney Plus this fall. And if that's not enough, he also has a chef show. So, I mean, what I'm trying to do is trying to point out that he has something in common with James Brown, in that I think he's the hardest working man in Hollywood. I'd like to introduce to the stage Jon Favreau. What's up, man? It's the same. So I have to say, I really am appreciative of you being here, and I think everybody here would say the same thing.
Well, you've done such good work with us and been so cooperative and helpful in trying to figure out new ways to approach production using all these real-time rendering tools that it's my pleasure to be here because you guys have really gone the extra mile for us.
Awesome. So being that we're here at SIGGRAPH, which is kind of the preeminent conference for computer graphics and interactive tool sets and techniques, I thought I'd ask you a little bit about your background in terms of kind of how you've moved through time and used these tools and kind of started to bring computer graphics and these tools into filmmaking, but specifically into storytelling.
Well, I was a bit of a Luddite at first. I loved the CG in Jurassic Park, but I was very skeptical about it because if you remember, after the initial burst of really good CG work, it started to be applied to everything. And so I tended to lean towards the practical stuff like on Zathura, but by the time I hit Iron Man, that's when the hard surface stuff started to become really good. And at ILM, I started giving notes on practical shots, thinking that they were CG. So I knew we crossed that threshold. And so I started to trust it for hard surfaces, but not for other things yet. Eventually, by the time I did Jungle Book, that's when I started to believe in fur rendering and for rendering animals. So it was waiting for the technology to get to the point that it was good enough to have it be seamless in the production. And it was actually on Jungle Book when we were moving those green screens around, I started to get very frustrated with how long it took in production. And also there was so much CG environments that no matter how much you planned it, you were still pushing a lot of the decision making into post-production.
Yeah.
And you don't have your department heads anymore. You know, you're in post. You know, the VFX supervisor takes over for your production designer. They take over for your cinematographer. And you're remaking the movie later in post. So that was something that was sort of nagging at me, like how do you have a better green screen stage where you don't have to move the green screen around and not just relying on like simulcam or something that was volume based to figure out what it was. So that was sort of nagging at me. At the same time, Andy Jones, who was my animation supervisor, was telling me about a demo that they were doing at Weaver of, they had a development kit for the new Vive that hadn't been out yet. I went over there and saw VR for the first time on that platform. And I was really excited by it just as a medium, not as a production tool.
Right.
And I saw the blue, which is the one with the whale, which is really cool. It just was very striking. And I saw the potential of what VR could do. I started actually working with them on a project called Gnomes and Goblins. I think we have a clip of.
Actually, we do. Why don't we, while you're talking, run that as well, yeah.
You know, the idea of being in a world and having presence and eye contact with little creatures. We did a demo about 3 years back that's up on Steam. And we've been working on Gnomes and Goblins all the way through. That was on Unreal. So that was my first experience with Epic. And I was really excited by how, you know, the quality of the real-time renders in VR and making you, it was close enough for you to feel like you were in a real environment.
Right.
Even though it was, you know, you're dealing with real-time rendering.
Right.
At that point, we were starting to mess around. At the end of Jungle Book, we started messing around with this consumer-facing VR equipment and started to develop camera tools that we could do. I think what was talked about by the last speaker.
Right.
With using creating basically a multiplayer filmmaking game in VR. And so we said if we were ever going to do a film like Jungle Book again, we could use that. And lo and behold, we did Lion King next. And we built a tool set with Magnopus. And you know, we're working with a lot of different people, different vendors, different platforms, and came up with a system by which we did the camera capture for Lion King using filmmaking tools within VR so that it wasn't going to be just a previz person on a box, but it was going to be Caleb Deschanel as my cinematographer. I would have James Chinlin as my production designer. We would build our sets, upload it into VR, and we would scout around in VR and have this iterative process where we'd go to the location, just like you would on a live action shoot, and discuss camera angles, pick lenses. Andy would do the animation, so we pre-animated everything. And we would shoot it as though we were, you know, we'd stand there looking at the lions and we would shoot it using those
I
film
think
tools.
the unintended consequences kind of in the 90s. I mean, I remember, you know, seeing like the test of Jurassic Park and going like, oh man, things are about to change. But there was this unintended consequence of like kind of all of the visuals being removed from the actual process. And I think, you know, even to this point, I mean, you know, this conversation about, you know, how do you deal with the intricacies of how something looks through notes?
Right, and that's the problem, right? In post-production, you're giving notes. By the time that note gets from your supervisor to the person in the department and to the person on the box, they're just going off a checklist, and you know, and they work so hard, and there's such a big workload. We would do things like we would get the shot back. Instead of giving a layout note, we would pull it back in and operate. Rob Legato would run the wheels and we would operate over the shot.
Right.
So we just said, here, this is it, and then let them conform it and do the render on top of it.
Right.
And when you save those iterations, it saves so much work with the people who are actually the technicians and the artists. I think it's debilitating to have so much work being done that doesn't hit the screen.
Right.
So it maximizes the efficiencies and also, I think, creates a sharper, more focused group of collective of artists that are working on this vision. And it also allows you to do a lot of planning in advance too, because you create essentially your own previs. And we do this on The Mandalorian in pre-production too. We've taken this learning, and that's the project that we collaborated on. We use a VCAM system, because I'm working a lot of times with directors who don't have a lot of experience as the executive producer, and it gets to be an apprenticeship program where we get to make the movie essentially in VR, send those dailies to the editor, and we have a cut of the film that serves the purpose that previs would have.
Right.
And so you're using it in the case of Lion King in lieu of layout.
Right.
And in the case of The Mandalorian or other live action productions in lieu of previs.
Right.
But it allows for collaboration. And so when you finally hit the set, you are looking at the set extending out if you're in VR, or in the case of Mandalorian, we have video walls. And so the real-time render we thought was just going to be for interactive light or for dynamic moving green screens, which was to solve the problem from Jungle Book.
Right.
Just to create a more efficient workflow on the set, so we weren't relighting and moving everything, but we could actually drag and move a halo of green behind the person and have all that great interactive light that made Gravity look so good, or that we used for Jungle Book. But then we ended up, and we were talking, Kim Libreri was on the team. We were like, maybe someday we could get final pixel set extension. We got like a tremendous percentage of shots that actually worked in camera just with the real-time renders in engine that I didn't think Epic was going to be capable of. But for certain types of shots, depending on the focal length and shooting with anamorphic lenses, there's a lot of times when it wasn't just for interactive, but you actually got to look at, and even if we ended up replacing the backgrounds, we could see in camera the lighting, the interactive light, the layout, the background, the horizon. We didn't have to bash things together later.
Yeah.
And then even if we had to up-res them or replace them, we had the basis for it and all the interactive light. And so the back and forth on a TV schedule is, what you could have a year and a half to mess around with on a film. You don't have that kind of turnaround time. And so you get that precision. So I think that the real-time render, and then as you get into ray tracing and as you get into better rendering, I see it as this convergence that's not going to, I don't think it's two different things. And I guess that's the point I'm making. I've messed around in VR, but all the things I learned in VR, I brought over to filmmaking and for television. So I think it creates this dynamic environment for creative types, and not just people who have the resources of a studio, but people who could do it with a gaming system.
It feels like everybody coming to set is bringing their best self to the set, right? So it's like your cinematographer isn't like, lighting to something that is green screen that's going to happen later on down the, like they're in there telling you little intricacies. And I think, part of that, at least from what I've observed, is those happy accidents, those things that is because someone lights something a certain way, or those kind of little things. If you can make that happen all together, that's where the magic of filmmaking happens.
And I think it also forces you to make creative decisions early and not kick the can down the road, because you go to a set, you put up a green screen, you figure it out later. But here you have all of these brilliant people with, we have 100 years of experience making cinema. Why abandon that just because we're disrupting the tech?
Yeah.
Let's inherit the skill set of these great artists and build tools out. I mean, Avid did a great job of figuring out a way to have an editing suite that was user-friendly enough that somebody who didn't have a tech background could cut a film because you emulated those tools. And as we build out different tool sets for virtual camera, we would build things for Caleb. And he would say, boy, I wish we could actually dynamically pull focus. He would bring in his piece of gear that he'd use on a real film set, and we'd encode it, do a code dump, and lo and behold, Monday morning, we'd be pulling focus live, and then you get those happy accidents you're talking about. Because we had on the set of Lion King, dolly track, a crane. If you came to our set, you would see a black box filled with a full crew, assistant directors, script supervisor, dolly grip, crane grip, focus puller, everything, except the lighting department would be on boxes. And Caleb would say, no, don't light it like that. You put a 10K here.
And that vocabulary is film vocabulary.
And they're teaching the people with the tech basis what that is, and also what's the chain of command on a set?
Right.
Just because anybody could walk over and move a tree or something in the set doesn't mean you should.
Right.
We need to inherit an AD or a set dresser has to be in charge of that so that we inherit the culture of cinema. And that also means the collaborative nature of filmmaking that technology enables, and real-time rendering offers a tremendous opportunity to condense that and incorporate everybody's vision into it so they don't show up at the premiere and get surprised by what lighting decisions you made.
Right. Well, so you also touched on something else on, in talking about department heads, you mentioned editors.
Yes.
And so another aspect, and I'd like you to touch on a little bit is that instant feedback of what something is going to look like, because we've also talked to other people like in the stunt or in the action design department. They're actually able to do things which are saving days on shooting and allowing also for the editor to know what it's going to look like so that you could start making decisions.
So we'll do like simple mocap to create essentially previs, but if you have your stunt performers wearing like Moven suits and you digitize them and you've already taped off the set and you have a digital environment, you could have them run it, set cameras, and do a pre-cut to see what you want to do. And then if you want a keyframe, you just go right on top of that, or you do a more robust capture system. But all of it started with us really inheriting what Jim Cameron did on Avatar. That was, we busted those crates open when we were doing Jungle Book, and we were inheriting this like 10-year-old tool set. But those tools were very specific to data-rich, data-heavy performance capture that we didn't really need if we were going to have bears going around the jungle. We were going to keyframe that anyway.
Right.
So we found that we just needed to be tracking the camera movement to get all of the idiosyncrasies of the camera movement for Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have all this consumer-facing hardware that wasn't available back then, and with no latency, you move, you look, everything's locked in.
Right.
You're always dropping a few frames on that on the motion capture stuff. It wasn't really designed for real-time camera movement in the same way that you could achieve if you were capturing in a completely digital environment where there's no latency, and you could have an operator really operating using the gear heads, using hydro heads, fluid heads. So the tech breakthrough has actually crossed the line where the technical people feel comfortable enough using it that they don't feel that they're being pushed away from the tool set that they're used to using in analog filmmaking.
Right. So you spoke to live action. I mean, we have the animated kind of series, and then you have the massively huge like tentpoles, which, sometimes the 3/4 of it could be animated. It might as well be an animated film. But you're also talking about things that are live action films, having the LED background, you're tracking the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, these start to get into areas where it seems like, let me ask you, as an actor, what does that mean to be able to be in an environment?
Well, for my
like
actors,
that?
it was great because you'd walk on the set, and even if it's just for interactive light, you are walking into an environment where you see what's around you. And even though it might not hold up to the scrutiny if you're staring right at it from close up with the pixel pitch, you're still getting peripheral vision. You know where the horizon is. You feel the light on you. Mm-hmm. You're also not setting up a lot of lights.
Right.
You're getting a lot of your interactive light off of those LED walls.
Right.
So to me, this is a huge breakthrough. And it would fool people. I had people come by the set from the studio who said, I thought you weren't building this whole set here. And I said, no, all that's there is the desk. And they would see because it had parallax and perspective, it looked, even from sitting right there, if you looked at it casually, you thought you were looking at a live action set. And, and if you could go in there and if you could, like, for example, if you wanted to do this theater, you would do photogrammetry with, with proper lighting, and you could then texture map that onto Geo that could operate in real time in Engine.
Right.
So even at the tech level we're at, we could really achieve a lot. But really, for me, the big breakthrough was for Lion King because I'm not an animation director.
Right.
I don't feel comfortable sitting looking over somebody's shoulder and doing layout like previs.
Right.
To me, I really have to roll my sleeves up and get in there. I'm very collaborative. So I want my camera operator, I want my DP, I want my production designer, and us all walking around together and looking at environments. And so we created, really it was the Tech Scout, more so than even the shoot, that the VR and the real-time render helped the most. And we used a gaming platform. We used a tool set that MPC and Magnopus worked on together, and we built it for this particular set of needs where we wanted the cameras to feel very organic. But we were able, again, to walk around Pride Rock, look at the lions, and talk about, hey, we should shoot when the sun's over there, and then you could drag the sun up there, and you could look at the light hitting. Again, it's an engine, so it wasn't that final pixel look, but it was enough for Caleb Deschanel to understand how much backlight he would need if he wanted to bounce or fill, and then to understand what lens you were working on. And so now all of a sudden you're scouting, preparing yourself for the shoot. So by the time that load was built, it was built around the parameters of the Tech Scout. And that's exactly what you would do in live action, whether you're building a real set or you're scouting a real location or you're blocking where you want the actors to walk. And so I was inheriting the culture that I came up with as I learned to be a director from being an actor. And it worked really good for me because it was this communal, creative experience.
I personally think that that's really exciting, in being around the visual effects community for as long as I have. The idea of really being able to contribute, not on the post-production side, but actually being able to be a meaningful contributor on set, and being able to see things final pixel, like having the work there. Or if you want to push it down the road a little bit, at least you have that you have that flexibility.
And then you could swap and then do a take with the best green screen you'll ever photograph. Again, it depends on the pixel pitch of the monitors. But those screens are getting really, really good. And so you start to feel this efficiency also for, like, if you want to pick up a shot, whether it's the animated version for Lion King or doing a pickup live action subject, backgrounds are added, like in Mandalorian, you just pull the file back up and there you could do a reshoot. Even if you do live action, use the background as a basis for the video wall, you could do, it's the best pickup, set that you'll ever find. We would just rifle through dozens of pickup shots with a splinter unit and just feed it back to the editor. And also, unlike previz, you'll just do, like in Lion King, we'll do a full take of action and let the editor decide what goes in. And that also contributed to the live action feel, which was imperative for Lion King. It could not look like, even though it's completely animated, it could not look like an animated movie. We had to make it feel live action for it to feel like something different from the old one. And we didn't want to do something that just felt like a remake of a 2019 animated remake of the '94 animated film. We wanted to feel more like something that was documentary style or live action to fit in with the other live action, with the other live action Disney classic remakes. So that particular tool set was specifically customized for that specific set of needs. Just like when I work with you, what we did for The Mandalorian was specific for that specific set of needs. So the customization is also really impressive of what you could do if you've got, if you understand what your needs are.
Let me ask you one last question here. Again, understanding where we're sitting.
Can't make food with it. That's what you're going to ask me?
That's a whole nother thing. But being where we are and who we're, these are some of the preeminent visual effects.
And we've worked together, some of us. Yeah. Anybody worked on any of the movies with me? No, none. Oh, wait, a couple. Thank you.
So, what do you see as the future of filmmaking with the technology, with these tools? Where do you see this going?
I think there's a democratization of creativity and filmmaking and storytelling. You've seen it in music. You used to have a full studio, and now people could do it with just a computer, a laptop. They could lay tracks on a good microphone and a good computer. It's there. And I think what's going to happen is people are only going to be limited by their imaginations as these tools become more user-friendly and these platforms less expensive. You're going to see people developing, whether it's games or creating social hang spaces or telling linear stories that they could communicate to one another. you're no longer limited by budget. It's like writing a novel.
Right.
So it may not be ready for prime time right now, but if the big movies are doing it, it's only a matter of time before Moore's Law takes over and it becomes a lot more accessible. And so people are going to be creating worlds.
Right.
Worlds that are only limited by their imagination because the tool set is going to afford the ability to make the aesthetic as high a quality as one would come to expect from feature films that we saw growing up. So I think that allows, you don't have to wait in line to get financing for your dream project. You could just go off and make it just like people do now on YouTube. I don't see any reason why that's not going to take on all the aesthetic beauty of the video games and films that we see today.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jon Favreau, a true pioneer and a true gentleman. All right, we're done. Our goal today was to inspire you, and I hope we did that. Now we're going to move on to the part when we can feed you a little bit. We'll have the open bar up to 7:30. Do not miss our tech talks. On Wednesday at SIGGRAPH, a lot of interesting topics. I want to point out that all the tools that were referred in this conversation with Jon are shipping in 4.23. It's actually truly available for you guys. You can go off the internet, download 4.23 previews, and you can do all the cool stuff that Jon was talking about. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Please stick around. Have a great SIGGRAPH.